Asthma is a common problem most people are either aware of or unfortunately have. But did you know that it is classified as an inflammatory disease of the lungs and may be triggered by allergies or autoimmunity when the body turns on itself? What happens when you have asthma is that your airways are always inflamed, and they can become even more swollen when something triggers irritation of the lungs, such as physical activity. You can imagine that having swollen airways makes it difficult to move air in and out of the lungs, restricting breathing, and causing symptoms such as coughing, wheezing, shortness of breath, and chest tightness.
So who gets asthma? Well, it mainly appears in younger children, but can also manifest in adults later on in life. But be warned, once you have it, most people will never outgrow it, regardless if their symptoms improve on their own or with the help of an inhaler. Therefore, this disease is not surprisingly fairly common around the world, with 1 in 12 people diagnosed with the form of asthma and 300 million people worldwide currently suffering from its symptoms.
But does this all make sense? In the history of life on Earth, nature has provided a way of eliminating bad traits from organisms and favoring the good ones, a process called natural selection. So why would such a detrimental disease like asthma still exist today?
It was observed that asthma started to become very common around 1950 to 1970, the same time that the number of infectious diseases such as measles and mumps started to die down. So is this a coincidence? Well, based on this parallel data, researchers question why the rate of asthma is increasing around certain parts of the world, while the rate of infectious diseases is decreasing at the same time. To answer their question, scientists came up with 2 theories, called the hygiene hypothesis and the old friends hypothesis, which work together to help explain this interesting trend observed over the past 65 years.
Basically, these 2 hypotheses state that living in an overly sterile environment reduces our interactions with both good and bad bacteria and infectious parasites, which it turns out we may need to stay healthy. In the past, bacteria trained our immune system, teaching it when to defend the body and to what extent. Without that training, our immune system has become oversensitive, attacking its own body without cause. This has led to many of the autoimmune disorders developed today.
But is the world really that sterile? Does this even make sense? In developed nations such as North America and Europe, it does. Starting in the 1950s, industrialization, the building of large cities, really began to take off in these developed nations. With these modern cities came soap, fresh water, and antibiotics, all reducing our exposure to infectious parasites and bacteria, making a very clean environment for humans to live in. One scientist named Kozel even found that childhood asthma was more common in the clean urban cities when compared to the rural areas of Chile that lacked access to basic sterile resources. And this wasn't the only study that showed this trend. In 2017, studies published by both Arietta and Olzak found that when they experimentally removed the bacteria from within young mice, they ended up being far more susceptible to asthma when compared to other mice who grew up with their bacteria still intact. Therefore, based on these studies and many more like them, scientists have suggested that by living in such a sterile world, we have eliminated too much of our contact with parasites and bacteria, sending the immune systems of humans into overdrive, ultimately, and quite possibly, leaving us more susceptible to developing autoimmune diseases, allergic diseases, and of course, asthma.
But wait a minute. If bacteria causes infectious diseases but possibly prevents asthma, how can we eliminate both problems living in clean environments? This is the question that scientists are trying to solve today. Some suggest that there may be a balance between autoimmune disorders and infectious diseases, where maybe if we reintroduce some good bacteria into our environment, humans may be better equipped to defend themselves against disorders like asthma. Other researchers have even gone so far to suggest Hellman therapy for these diseases, which involves putting a type of worm inside the person who has asthma, with the end goal of alleviating their asthmatic symptoms. And lucky for us, studies done in Ethiopia by Scrivener and colleagues have already shown promising results. But until researchers figure out this delicate balance with more clinical trials, it seems like we might have to hold on to our inhalers for a little bit longer, and figure out how to kick asthma's butt in the meantime.
Thanks for watching!
We hope you enjoyed our video.
And please remember to like and share. Bye!